Building resilience is about that bounce back. Really, we all have hard times.
It's a human tendency, we go back in our shells and we do not try again. Why it is important to keep trying and trying till you succeed. Good day, welcome to Infinity Safety Awareness, our community program. We acknowledge we are located on Treaty 6 and within the Métis homelands and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. We acknowledge this land as the traditional territory of many First Nations such as the Cree, Dene, Stoney, and Blackfoot. Today we have Dr. Judi with us. She does not need any introduction. She is a practiced psychologist over 2 decades. Judi has been leader at the Psychologists Association of Alberta since 2013. Congratulations, Judi. And Judi is also CEO as work to the strengthen the role of psychology to increase access for Albertans. Her personal history is more interesting. As of a mother, she has a journey of reverence. She is from a large family, descendant of both immigrants and long-standing mixed Canadian culture. She grew up on a farm in rural Northeast Alberta with a parent working away in Fort McMurray. She has friends and families from Cree communities, and she has been their struggle up close. So Judi, now we are talking, you have parents, you have been from large family, your parents were working in Fort McMurray, rural area to the urban. We always talk about mental health, but then I'm going to relate this as a building resilience. How you connect all those things together?
For me, Sunny, building resilience is about that bounce back. Really, we all have hard times. We all come from different histories, but we will all have struggles. As humans, we always have had struggles. Resilience is about that bounce back and making it stronger and easier for us to bounce back when times are hard.
But Judi, when we talk about bounce back, is other term I can use, try till you succeed, right? It's easy to say, difficult to practice, because what happened, like if you hear a negative response, say you cannot do it. It's human tendency, we go back in our shells and we do not try again. Why it is important to keep trying and trying till you succeed.
Yeah, you make some really good points there. So one thing I'm getting from what you're saying, Sunny, is that resilience can be learned. Sometimes we have to fight our human nature to give up or to be sad, and we have to learn to keep moving forward. But underneath that, underlying it, that makes it possible is hope. We have to have hope, and we have to have that belief that things will be better.
So you are a professional, you are a professional psychologist. Why mental health is so important? Reason being why I'm talking about it in a South Asian community or Aboriginal culture or Métis culture, this has been a taboo. We never ask for a help when needed. Why it is so important we look for a help when it's required.
Yeah, this is so interesting because in many cultures and communities, we had naturally occurring ways to be strong and to support each other. And as we speed up through time, and our current context here, maybe in Alberta, we lose some of those traditions and strengths, and then mental health, mental strength, psychological well-being, they can be seen with stigma. That's a problem. If you have a problem, you deal in that area, or you something is broken and you need to be fixed. Whereas really, mental health is health, and if we see it as part of our health, we need to reframe it in the context that we're living in now together as a mixed community here in Alberta, to get stronger.
And Judi, you brought very good point. And then, like when I was introducing you, you have been raised in a large family or a joint family. The culture has changed. Like, in the olden days, we said, to raise a child, we need a community, we need a whole village to bring, being a good human. But now that concept does not exist. And even sometimes we don't even know who is our neighbors are. So in that content, especially in an urban area, and if parents are so busy, why it is so important, and what are the signs you can look the person needs a mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. Essential consideration, Sunny. If we're not building community as parents, we may be thriving or surviving. We're just going to work, getting things done, doing what we need to do, but we're not role modeling the health that comes from building community where we are. And then all of a sudden we may notice struggles in a family member, in a neighbor, in a child, and we have to struggle to put those things in place when we can be aware that we're social creatures and we need our relationships, we need those personal connections, then we put more effort in them to begin with. Still, if we find we're struggling and a family member is struggling, that's the time to start building those connections.
And Judi, I have to agree with you, because we always talk about in a workplace or any other area, you need, it's a OHS legislation. For every 4 people, you need a 1 person who is first aid trained. I have just recently taken a mental health first aid. It was a 4 days program. It was mind-boggling. It opened my eyes. What you want to say as a family or as a person or as an organization or a business, having a person with the mental health first aid is also important, and why it is important.
It's absolutely essential. One of the things as psychologists that we feel is most important to dealing with anything is curiosity. So we're not passing judgment, we're curious and we're learning. And people who take mental health first aid or go online and look for great resources and read about psychology, stress, anxiety, parenting, instead of blaming, are we doing a good job or a bad job? Is there something wrong with me or a family member or a colleague? Instead, we're curious. And when we're curious, we get surprised what we learn. And those are tools in our tool bag, our awareness about ourselves and others. So our ongoing journey, we're more aware, we can take better care of ourselves and we're a role model, but we're also more aware of the people around us at work, at home, and in community.
But as a human, and as you said, we are social animal, right? We are animals, but we are social animals. And we always worried about what people are going to say or think about us. And I think that also affect our resilience, mental health, and coping up with the society. How to not be worried about what people are saying, and to be important to yourself or your needs without being a revolutionary or a troublemaker.
Yeah, that's definitely a personal journey, Sunny, because you want to be open and transparent. If you're honest and upfront with people, that's such a weight off your shoulders. It's empowering to others, but it might not be safe. So you also have to know that you're strong enough to be open and how safe you are emotionally, physically, psychologically in the setting you're in. And so we often say it's like scaffolding on the outside of a house. We should always be pushing it a little bit, be a little bit more open, break down a few more barriers. And sometimes that might be pretty private. We might just have one person we trust that we can talk to or share with. And sometimes we might be very open, get in front of a large group and own that we have anxiety or addiction. And that's extremely empowering, but only again, if we're safe. So it's a journey along a continuum depending on the setting we're in and how strong we are, but it makes a big difference.
So Judi, we always talk about to stay healthy, you have to have a workspace balance, right? Like work and family, all balance. It does not happen. We know that, right? But then for mental health, we always talk about eat well, drink well, non-alcoholic drinks, exercise and everything. What recommendations you have for any any family member or any working person to keep their mental health or resilience in line? What they should
Oh,
do or what they should not do?
yeah. One of the key considerations I always say is don't make it another task list and a chore list. If people say, "Oh, now I have to eat healthy and sleep well and get more exercise and go to work," and they get very overwhelmed and very stressed. A teaching that I learned from Cree teachings that I really appreciate is that we've got a wheel and we need to have it in balance. And so we may only be able to do a little bit of work in each area, but the wheel will still turn. If we do a lot of work just on our physical health and nothing else, that wheel is not going to turn well. Or only our emotional health, we're psychologically taking care of ourselves, but we don't eat well, or we drink alcohol too much, etc. The wheel is not going to turn well. So those four areas are our emotional health, our physical health, our intellectual health, learning, thinking, and the last one is spiritual, and that can be religion, culture, community, but spiritual health is also important. And so we can't put too much effort in any one area, just strive for balance, doing your best every day.
So we always talk about for adults, right? We have small kids in the family, and like when they are like the terrible two, and they are teenager, they are getting the puberty age, going from kindergarten, so from elementary to junior high. So they want their freedom also. So how to balance it? What your advice will be, I would say, to keep balance in both, so you are giving them a freedom also they can explore, but on a same token, you are not letting them do their something which is bad with your experience.
Like the magic textbook on how to parent. like many people, I grew up with a grandmother in the home. My grandfather had passed away, so I had at least one grandparent there. If you think about it, then you've got multiple adults in the house, you've got other children in the house, and you all are learning and finding that balance together. Sometimes now we live in households with, maybe just the parents and a child. That book, those rules about parenting become more and more complex because we don't have anyone else to share the ideas with or to test them out. And that's really what we're doing as parents. We're often testing. We're taking our own experiences growing up, things we read online, we get from psychology or parenting experts. We're putting them together with culture, experience. Sometimes we're even kind of naughty in a good way. We say, I didn't like that growing up, so I'm going to give this to my children. We didn't have a lot of extra growing up. We didn't really know we were poor because we lived on a farm. We always had food and people. But then I tended to give my daughter too many things when she was growing up, and that just teaches them to put their hand out and not to work very hard for themselves. So again, that curiosity and saying, okay, I'm going to do some experimenting with my parenting. Oh, I let my child go too far. That didn't feel right for me and my values and beliefs. I'm going to dial that back a bit. But we go back to connections. The more we can reach out to learn from others, the more tools we have in our tool bag for finding out what those parenting lines really are and that fit for us in the best way.
So my question is, like, when we are dealing with children or any family member or a spouse or significant other, when we are trying these things, like, as you say, family dynamics, how we are helping in their mental health.
Yeah, and that one's really, really important because, like many things, when we parent, we sometimes forget that role modeling is our most powerful tool. And so if we're not taking good care of ourselves and we have concern about our child staying up too late and then they're irritable the next day, or they're anxious, or they're stressed, or if they're sad, and our role modeling is directly to tell them, quit being sad, you have nothing to be sad about, it's very confusing. If we're able to say, hey, I'm sad sometimes too. Now, what can we do about it? What else is out there? And help them move on. We're actually, in a very subtle way, teaching them some very powerful lessons about life. And as a parent, if we experience stigma and we're embarrassed or shy, to ask others for help, to go to online reading about parenting, or to admit that we're struggling with our parenting, we're likely to not do as good of a job as we would do if we ourselves are open and honest and say, sometimes I make mistakes too, and I want to learn.
Judi, I have to confess one thing, right? When we talk about, we have stereotype or our own way of thinking. So building resilience, I just connected with the mental health. Could you please explain what it means? Like what exactly it is? It's in your brain is like, we are talking about the brain, how it works. It just connected me to a mental health, but what exactly it means?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to do a little segue and promotion. People may watch this later than September 10th of this year, but here in South Edmonton, there's a great group, let me find the name, having a Matter of Mind mental health conference, because it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And that's the Psychologists Association, September 10th in South Edmonton. They're going to have a day gathering where people get together and say, what is mental health and what can we do about it? Psychologists, we sometimes think about it so much that we have trouble explaining it in an easy way, but it's part of our balance. We have our physical health, our intellectual, where we learn, our spiritual, and our community connection. But what about how all those pieces come together emotionally, in problem solving, in hope? That for me is our mental or our psychological health. And that'll help us deal with pain, with stress, with big changes in life.
And how, like we always talk about, is it taboo? Don't eat this. It's too greasy. Don't eat too much chocolate. Do not eat chips. Is a heavy food? Is a light food? Is a healthy food? Is an unhealthy food? How food is important in our mental health?
Absolutely. Like all things, moderation is best. We love all those kind of treats, but when we are having too many treats, we feel sluggish and low. And we might think that's not a big deal. But we know that there's a percentage of the population, up to 12%, that have what's called seasonal affective disorder, or the winter blues. They really get down by January, February, March. And by really, I don't mean a little sad. Their sleep is disordered, their thinking is disordered, they really struggle. And research is very clear. If in that time you're eating mostly carbs and sugar, potato chips, desserts, stuff I like, you're going to be worse. Your body's going to struggle. It's not what you're going to need, but you're going to crave it because it's easiest. The human body is actually wired to do what's easiest. So when we get down, we make poor choices. When we make poor choices, they actually don't give our body the fuel we need to bounce back.
And how much weather makes a difference? Like we have 4 seasons, but suddenly we see is a summer and summer to winter. And then, some people like, we don't feel to go out because we have to, put jackets on and so much clothing. When it's too hot, it's too cold. How does weather impact our mental health?
Because we're all so very different, people react differently to weather. There are people who love the cold, or I've met people who love the rain, and people who have a very different reaction. And that depends mostly what we're used to. My husband was born and raised in a hot tropical country. By the second week of 30 below, he's really struggling. Well, we know, and for myself, when I go home to his country and spend time with family there, if it's more than 30 above, which it often is, for too many days in a row, I don't think as well. I don't sleep as well because I'm not used to that. I'm not wired for it. What we see very clearly in the research, though, is sunlight is an extremely powerful tool from the Creator, from nature. Sunlight, by spring and summer in Alberta, people are happy and they function better. We have these long days, and it really is good for us as humans. By the middle of December on, but daylight is so short, and sometimes we're going from home to work, we're working at home, and we're not getting any natural sunlight. Or maybe you're like me, Sunny, we go outside in the winter and I'm bundled from head to toe and only my eyes are sticking out, we're actually not getting the sun that our bodies need to be strong. And that has the clearest psychological impact on people's appetite, memory, stress, sleep, etc.
I have another question, but it comes in three segments or three parts. Mental health in a family. So first, my first question is, I can ask all three, or I can do it one by one. So my first question is, when you're living in a family, like, you have a family, the first age when the children, when the hormones change, they are going from young to adulthood, puberty age. How, as a parent, we can help them understand and psychology way in a better way? What's the best way to handle that situation? To talk about it, to open conversation.
Yeah. For myself, I often say, if I'm having a big struggle, lots of other people have had that struggle, and I can learn from them, not just my mistakes. So things as parents that we do, or that we experience from our own parents, that we may not have liked at the time. So I'm a teenager, pre-puberty, and I'm very emotional, and then my parents become more strict. Well, I'm angry and upset with that. But if I talk to my friends and family members and they all say their parents were strict when they acted out, then I'm like, oh, well, this is just the way it is. And I don't take it as personally. With our children, but especially our adolescents, they take things very personally. And so it becomes very important to expand their communities. They can't just have friends at school. You want them in an after school activity of some kind, cadet, sports, art, with religion, anything that gets them a second group of friends, but making sure it's not just other teenagers they're hanging out with, because adolescents are naturally self-centered. And it's the same for us as parents when we're struggling with, my child is experiencing puberty and pushing all the buttons and trying to be independent, and here's the rules I have. If our communities are larger and we've got multiple generations to draw on, and family and neighbors and friends, A, they'll share stories where we're not going to feel alone. It's a little less difficult to deal with. B, they're going to share tips and strategies that worked for them. They're also going to tell you what to do, and some of it you just have to listen politely and let go, but you're going to get some gems in there, some things that will fit for you, some tools in your tool bag that fit for you to pull out and try in your parenting. I don't know if that answered that, did it?
You did, but my second question is related to the same thing. Now, we're coming from a teenager to when we come 40 or 50s, when as a human, we are going through the hormone change, male or female, both. Mm-hmm. We get stressed, we are upset, we are emotional, we are very easy to triggered. Do you think so? Is it that time we need a help, or we should be consulting a psychologist?
Well, the general rule of thumb is anytime our three areas get impacted, we need outside help, whether it's a psychologist, a spiritual guide, whatever. We know we need extra. We need some extra assistance because we're suffering unnecessary. And in those three times we know we're suffering unnecessary, it's when we can no longer take good enough care of ourselves. So that's maybe appetite, sleep, we're just not taking good care of ourselves. The second is we clearly see that our either sleeping or eating, something is really quite disrupting our work, that's part of our self-care, really. We need to be able to parent, go to work, contribute to society. And if we can't do those things, it's gone too far. So contributing to society, taking care of ourselves. And the third is our core relationship. If our close family and friends, our spouse, our children, we start to damage those relationships because we're not in a good place, because we're emotional or upset, okay, it's going too far. So those are our three markers when things are going too far. Now, anything in life, diet or exercise, prevention is best. If you're reading things, reaching out, doing a mental health checkup every now and then, you're less likely to have those difficulties. But if you do, it's not a personal failure. That's when you stop and say, okay, now I want extra help to get through this next bit. I'm suffering more than I should, and likely the people around me are suffering more than they should too then.
The third one is also related. You can say all the above too. As a parent, we have kids at home and our life runs around them. But eventually they get married, and then suddenly you have so much emptiness because since you got married or you had a first child till you are in late 50, mid 50s or late 50s, your life ran around taking them for hockey, games, walk, and now they're gone. So you have so much emptiness, and I have seen a lot of people going in depression. They don't know what to do, getting cranky. So how to handle that situation?
Yeah, what's so important to me, Sunny, is that we recognize that change is very hard. Change can be a beautiful, wonderful thing, a marriage or a baby being born or children moving on their own, but it's still hard on us. And sometimes we're not used to focusing on ourselves. Parenting is the best example. I was a single parent for many years. It's all about the child, and you're making decisions for your own personal self, your career, your lifestyle. How does this impact my child or children? And so all of a sudden that lens shifts, and sometimes people have trouble shifting that lens or looking in the mirror and saying, oh, and now what do I want or need in my life? And when you don't do that, sometimes we hold on too tightly to our children and we don't let them grow. Or personally, I hate seeing my child make mistakes. It's like, if I can get involved and she doesn't make any mistakes, I'll feel better. That's not reality. That's not life. So we have to start to turn that focus to ourselves. And again, curiosity. Wait, this is really hard on me. How have other people struggled with this? It is supposed to be hard. That helps us to bounce back.
Judy, like we are talking, and as we are coming to the closure now, what message or what message would you like to give to the viewers? Or if you think we have missed anything which is really important for resilience?
Do I get to do both? Okay, first, as a psychologist, I have to say, what's really important to me is that many of us have received a message that self-esteem is everything. If we love ourselves and we tell our children they're wonderful, everything will be okay. And it turns out that's not the case. Turns out self-discipline is what's most important. And when we set goals and push ourselves to achieve them, we then get a sense of fulfillment. And we do feel better about ourselves. We like ourselves and others better. And even our children, to teach them self-discipline actually helps them to be stronger and happier and healthier. But my closing thought would probably be that resilience can be learned. You're not born with it or not born with it. Whatever your resilience is right now, you can build it. I'm building mine. We're all building it on a personal journey all the time. It requires self-care and being hopeful and good connections, learning and curiosity. And when it's hard, psychologists, community leaders, spiritual leaders, they're there to help.
Thank you, Judy. I really appreciate for taking your time and, talking about your personal experience, your professional experience, and giving us information, making us more knowledgeable. Once again, thanks a lot. Thank you for watching Infinity Safety Awareness Art Community Program. We are on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn. Please like it, please subscribe it. Thank you, keep watching and stay safe.